on the test.
How many points was it worth?
You know the percentage. You can figure out. You can figure out that if you know how many you missed, then the percent you got correct. So that formula would be this. Correct over total equals your percent. Usually you know the correct and the total when you're trying to find the percent, right? So this time you know the percent and you know the correct, so you could do this, put a 1 underneath it, cross multiply like it's at, so it'd be correct times 1 equals total times percent. Well, you know the percent, but you don't know the total, so then you'd have to solve for the total. And you want me to do the math instead of you, don't you?
Maybe. But I get it.
Other questions? Don't be afraid to ask. I'll tell you why I marked something wrong if you don't agree with it. It's not gonna help the grading, but I mean, especially on stuff where you got to explain stuff, there's a lot of discrepancies. You just, some of you don't know how to explain real well. Is that you, Phoenix? Your folks tell you that?
No, I tell myself that.
They ever ask you why, and you don't have an explanation, so you just walk away?
I just say because I wanted to. That's not my explanation.
Do you normally stay at least this far away when you say that?
No, I go right up to my dad. I know, if I say look up to you, you know, holding the door a little bit so I can shut it.
I didn't know that first.
No, Larry's different. It's Larry Legend.
Yeah,
I know my mom was like 5'2". I still didn't get close to her when I said, because I wanted to.
I don't say that's my dad.
And my mom she wouldn't even got up, she just sat in her chair and said, "You know you gotta sleep tonight, right?" Did mom never say that to you? You know you're gonna sleep. You know you're gonna sleep at some point. Alright, that's a good idea. Questions? Everybody understands all of it?
No.
Ask some questions. What's it say?
A study of effect of koalas, what? Sorry.
Koalas?
A study of the effect of koalas on the ecosystem of Kangaroo Island, Australia.
Alright, so we talked a little about this, and this is why I talked about it. If you're trying to, there's an island called Kangaroo Island. Guess what's on that island?
Kangaroo.
Guess what's not on that island? Koalas. Can you just take koalas and throw them on that island and watch and do an observational study and see what happens? You could. What's going to happen to it?
Not gonna be good.
It's not going to be good. Alright, so if you put down that observational, which a lot of people did, you can't really just do that. That'd be like me saying, hey, I'm going to throw some mustard gas in the room and I'm going to stand outside and watch and see what happens.
Well, see, it's like,
No, it's the exact same thing.
no, I know, but when you're reading it, it's like that would technically be observational, but morally, it's.
Think of the bigger picture, Michael.
Technically, I didn't notice it said Kangaroo Island before, so I just kind of thought we were just talking about koalas.
So what would be the best way to do it then?
Experiment.
That's an experiment. 'Cause you put them on a small plot, and then you don't put them on another plot, boom, you got an experiment.
If you'd explain all of that to me, I might have accepted it. But just to say, oh, I'm gonna turn a bunch of koalas loose on Kangaroo Island and experiment and see what happens, you can't do that. I mean, you can,
There's
I don't
no
know.
law against it.
got no money.
Is there laws against putting different animals on Kangaroo Island?
Yeah,
Yeah, but if,
there's laws against,
you probably will get
yeah,
caught.
there's laws against bringing animals from one country to another. That's why when you go through, like down in Mexico, they say, do you have anything to, I don't know, can't think of the word now, declare, that's what they say. So if you cross the line going to Mexico or Canada, they say, do you have anything to declare? And what they mean is, are you transporting anything back that you did not take down there? All right, and it's even fruit and stuff like that, because fruit carries what? Diseases and bugs and stuff. And if you bring them back up here, we had it just a couple of years ago. Think about, and you guys probably don't remember because you didn't care, the ash beetle was in,
So we were supposed to transport firewood?
the ash beetle was in certain counties, and you were not allowed to take firewood out of those counties to other counties. And if you got caught doing it, you were in big trouble. Other questions? Did that answer it right?
Yeah.
Other questions? More of the stuff that we do from here on out will be more math related, but there'll still be some explanations on some things. You can't get away from it. No other questions? Come on. Everybody just completely understands it all.
30.
What's this up? They probably asked about one of the other questions, didn't they?
Identify the sampling technique used in the study. It's a journalist interviews only 54 people waiting at the airport baggage claim and asks them how safe they feel during their travel.
So a journalist interviews all the people at the baggage claim. What technique are we using there? I accepted convenience, because he's standing there thinking, you know what, I gotta get this done for my job. I'm just gonna talk to the people who are right here. Convenience would work, and I heard the other one, cluster would work, either one of those. Others? We're just ready to move on? Alright. Now we're getting into, even though it's not gonna be the same kind of setup as that stuff was, we're gonna use that stuff throughout the year. But we're getting into where you actually have to do some math and do some work and be able to use your calculators. On this, just what we're gonna start covering, descriptive statistics. They describe the important characteristics of a set of data, and we're gonna be dealing with graphs, different kind of graphs, different kind of number setup, so on and so on. That's what the next few chapters deal with. We're also gonna talk about shape, like the shape of a curve, the center of a curve, the spread of a curve, the bell curve. The shape is a bell. All right, the center of it, right in the middle, there's a reason for that number, and we're going to talk about that. And then the spread. Spread is how it's spread out, how many A's there were, how many B's there were, how many C's there were, so on and so on. That's all stuff that we're going to talk about. Well, we're going to actually start chapter 2, frequency distribution and their graphs. So that's the title of what we're going to cover today, frequency distribution. Probably you might want to title it frequency distribution chart or something. That we're going to deal with these for the entire year, and it's going to be a big part of a whole lot of the stuff that we do. So this is probably going to make Maddie mad. She's out today, and probably the most important thing that we've covered all year long, so she's going to be upset. Engage. I don't know that Gage will be so upset though. I know, but Maddie will be. She'll probably watch the video like 10 times or something.
Gave me watch video once. say that. But you won't.
So you have to ask, hey, did you watch the video? Did you hear what we said about it? Then maybe he'll watch it. So frequency distribution in their graphs. I wouldn't write any of this down. We're gonna learn how to construct a frequency distribution. Guarantee there's gonna be a quiz next time over how to construct them, so that's really important. And how to construct a frequency distribution histogram, that's real important. And then these other things, a frequency polygon, relative frequency histogram, and this one right here. Somebody pronounce that for me.
Okay.
OGIVE, is that what you said? That's the way we're gonna pronounce it the rest of the year. OGIVE. I don't have any idea how to pronounce it. So we're gonna go with what Phoenix just said, and that's what we're gonna call it the rest of the year, OGIVE. How to create an OGIVE. Alright, so all these bottom ones, not as important as a histogram, but you need to know how to read them and how to look at them and how to take information from them. Frequency distribution, there's two different kinds of frequency distributions. One's an ungrouped frequency distribution. We're probably not going to do that one. And the other one is a grouped. That one we are going to do. So you might want to write down that information there, what a grouped frequency distribution is. I shouldn't say we're not going to do the ungrouped. We just won't do as much of them. Ungrouped would be if you had very few numbers. Like if everything was a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Then we would use an ungrouped, because 1 would be its own group, 2 would be its own group, 3 would be its own group, 4 would be its own group. Most of the stuff that we have, we're going to have, like if we were doing test scores. What could be your lowest test score?
4.
Keep going.
0.
0. What could be the highest test score? 100. So we'd have all those numbers in there. Well, we don't want to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and use all of them, because that's going to make our chart way too big. So we put them together in classes.
I thought you were just hypothetically
No.
a range of test
No.
scores.
And I hope, Mr. Simpson, that your low test score has never ever been a 4.
Hey, Spanish too? Might have been.
You did?
No, I got one. I got a flat 0.
What's his name, Brian?
It wasn't. I don't know what his name was, but I thought it was really funny. I wish I got a flat 0. Really funny.
I don't know, you don't want to
Zero's
do
not as bad as
things
anyway.
of having great in English.
You wish you got a 5.
Yeah, that'd have been really
Hey,
funny.
you grade my journal? So,
Yeah.
so next test, when we take the next test,
F1
remind me.
Well, not this
Yeah, I had a
class.
0.
I didn't.
I was gonna help you out and have you, let you get a laugh.
effort.
Yeah.
So group frequency distribution, that's what we're gonna do the most with. This is what they look like. This is ungrouped. Notice, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. How many 1s are there? 25, how many 2s? 38, so on, so on. So that's ungrouped. Grouped, we're gonna put things in classes. So this is saying from 8 to 30, 31 to 42, 43 to 54, so on, so on. How many are in the 55 to 66 group? 413. How can we figure out the total of our whole sample? Add them all up, right? And normally we're gonna want that, and that's gonna be N. N is the total that's in our sample somewhere. So we're gonna have, this is what we're gonna create. And we're gonna add parts to it. Let's see. That's the same thing we just wrote down. Frequency. Frequency, or F, just stands for frequency. So you won't see me write out the word frequency very often, number one, because I probably misspell it. I'll probably just put F. So, and we will take symbols. We'll take little quizzes and tests over symbols and abbreviations and graphs and stuff in here. And F is one of them I know I put on there a lot. So anytime you see F, it means what?
Frequency.
Frequency.
Or your test school.
Do what?
Or your test school.
Notice when you look at the classes here, this one stops at 5. What's the next one start at? There's got to be no gaps there. All right? You can't go 1 to 5 and then 11 to 15. You can't leave gaps. You got to have all the classes in there, even if
There's none.
there was 0 of those. You still need that class in there. The hardest part of making these charts is figuring out your classes. Figuring out how to set up your classes, and I'm going to show you that. The frequency is just counting up how many's in there. That's not hard. Sometimes it's hard because we start counting through there and say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and then you get distracted, right? Phoenix never gets distracted with that. I couldn't get him with the ant thing. I swear I would. When you were in geometry, I bet I got you with it.
I think you did.
You would.
I was asleep, I don't think you did.
You were asleep. Probably said squirrel instead. The numbers out here are called your lower class limits. What do you think these are called?
Your
Upper class limits. So you got your lower class limits, you got your upper class limits, and your frequency distribution chart or table. This, when you take any 2 consecutive of these and subtract them, that's your class width. That's how wide your class is. So if I pick these 2, what's 21 minus 16? 5. So that means there's 5 in each thing. Now, you got to think about it for a minute, and I always have to do this, maybe you don't. What numbers are included in this first class right here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many of them are in there? That's your class width. Alright? You can take any 2 consecutive lower class limits and subtract them, and it's going to give you the class width. So we got lower class limits, upper class limits, class width. Lower class limits, if you want to write something down about each one of these, lower class limits are the smallest numbers for each class. Upper class limits are the highest numbers. And the class width are, you're subtracting 2 consecutive lower class limits. You could also subtract 2 consecutive upper class limits. It makes no difference which ones you're subtracting, but it's easier to put lower class limits on there. Hopefully it'll be different in this class. Usually the quiz that we take next time, we'll take it like 4 times. Take it next class, class after that, class after that, class after that. Let's hope it's not 4 times. Last year, I think it was twice. Year before that, I think it was 3 times. Because we're going to take it until I think everybody understands it. Or if I think that Johnny's never going to understand it, then we'll take it till everybody else understands it and Johnny's just out of luck. So if you're looking at your chart, we have this, we got our class here, we got our frequency here, the class is split up. These lower limits, these are your upper limits, and then your class width is just any 2 of the lower limits subtracted. Can you handle all that easy stuff so far? I'm just making it sound hard, aren't I? Class midpoints and class boundaries. Do I have this here? Hold on a second. Let me look at something here. Alright, let's go back. Class midpoints. This is something we're gonna add to the chart. I'm not sure why I put it here. So on our chart, we got our classes, then we have our frequency, and we're gonna add other stuff to it. One of the things that we're gonna add to it is the class midpoints, and we're also gonna add class boundaries to it sometimes. And we'll talk about those as we go through. Just write down what they are and we'll get to them here in a little while. As far as, nothing really hard about them. Just do a little math.
Lower class, upper class,
Yeah, this is probably what you need. Class midpoints, this is how you find it. Class boundaries, and that's how you find it. Class boundaries we put in here as you're writing, because I think on that one we had 1 to 5, then like 6 to 10, and you got the Michaels of the world. When I said you go 1 to 5, then 6 to 10, so you're covering everything. What's getting missed when you're going 1 to 5, 6 to 10? 5.1, 5.2, 5.5, so on and so on. So class boundaries allows us to include all of that stuff. Even though most of the time, if we're like doing some kind of survey or something, and we're talking to people, are you gonna have 5.1 people? If you have a 0.1 of a person, then something's majorly wrong. Don't say anything, Brian. I can see the little gerbil going around in your head. I already want you out of here. Getting ready to say something silly. I should have said him instead of Michael. Michael, you're not a smart aleck, right? I should have said Brian, shouldn't I? I'm gonna be a smart aleck over here. Class midpoint. Class midpoint is exactly what it sounds like. What's gonna be halfway in between 1 and 5? 3.
That's raising 5%.
So 3 would be the class midpoint of that. How about what's halfway in between 6 and 10? 8. That's the class midpoint. Now we're going to use the class midpoint when we go to graph this stuff so that you don't have to write so much, because we don't want to write 1 to 5 down here. All right, that's a lot of writing. We're putting a lot of numbers on there. So when we do our graphs, instead of doing 1 to 5, we're going to put a little mark and we're going to put 3. And then we'll put the next midpoint, 8, and so on and so on. And use those instead of putting all the numbers on there. Make it a little shorter. This symbol is called the summation. Have you guys seen that before? Looks like some crazy E. All summation means is that you add all of them, whatever you're dealing with, you just add them all. When you make it, just make it, starts off like an E, come in at an angle, go back out at an angle, come back out.
It's not the ugliest one I've ever seen, but.
So that's a summation. So if it says something like this, summation of X, that means all the X's that you're given, you're just adding them all up. what we've already covered. That's one of the things we're gonna do, the summations of the frequencies. That means we're gonna add them all up to see how many we actually had in the whole sample, in the whole group. Alright, when you're making a frequency distribution, these are the steps you're gonna do. I'll go ahead, I don't know how many's on here. I think that's all for this one. So there's a couple of steps. This is important, how to make these. This is what the quiz is going to cover next time. You're going to make a frequency distribution chart. So you're going to have to know how to make them. On the first one, as you write it down, it says decide on the number of classes. You might write next to yours, they're normally going to tell you. All right, for the stuff that we're going to do, they're going to tell you how many classes. They're going to say, hey, we want 5 classes, we want 7 classes, we want 4 classes, whatever. They're going to tell you. Usually between 5 and 20. That's not even feasible. Guaranteed, Mackenzie, we're never going to do one that has 20 classes. It's too much. Put a big asterisk out next to number 2. When we take this quiz next time, that's where most of you are going to mess up. And the bad thing about messing up at number 2, guess what that does to the whole rest of the quiz? It's all wrong from there on out. So if you don't do number 2 correctly, and the quiz is worth 20 points, you might get 1 out of 20. So we had that list of your grades. What was the lowest one? Anybody remember? 26? And it went, I don't know what all the rest of them were. What was the highest one? So we had that list of numbers. If we were going to make a frequency distribution for this, we got our classes, and we got our frequency here. To figure out your classes, that bottom formula is what you got to start off with. All right, you got to find your class width. First of all, we already know what's our lowest number.
26.
So that's going to be our lowest number right here in the start. Then what we got to figure out is we're going from there to what, and there to what, there to what. They're going to tell you how many classes. Let's say we want to do it grade-wise. So you got A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. So how many?
5.
So we're going to go with 5 classes. All you do to find out where you go from here and for the rest of the numbers in here is that little formula right there, the range. Does everybody know what the range is?
44.
All right, just highest minus lowest. So in this case, it'd be 44 minus 26. Somebody help me out, what's 44 minus 26? 18. So we got 18 on top. How many classes do we want? 3.6. Is that what we came up with? Now, write this down. I thought I had it on here, but I don't see it. When you get this, when you get your answer here, always round up. No matter what, always round up to the next whole number. So instead of 3.6, what's it gonna be? 4.
So even if it's 3.2, 4.
Even if it's this, 3.0000000000001. Guess what you're gonna round up to? 4. Always. Alright? That's gonna be your class width. So now, once we have ours, to do this, and we're gonna, I think it's gonna tell us on the next slide, you don't go over to here, you go down. So you go from 26 and you add on 4. What's 26 plus 4? And then you keep going down. What's 30 plus 4? What's 34 plus 4? How far down am I gonna go? I want 5 classes, right? So right now I have how many classes? So 38 plus 4 is? Now, and this will be on the next slides and stuff, but since I'm doing it, I'm going to go ahead and finish it out. How do you think you find the upper class limits here?
You go one below the next one.
Look at this number right here, and you go one less than that. So what's going to be right here? 29. What's going to be here? 33. What's going to be here? 37. What's going to be here? 41. See, that's my phone. It's supposed to be, it hadn't been working all day. And then on this last one, you take this number and you add your class width to it. 41 plus what? 4, which is 45. Now, we don't actually have any 45s, right? But these all have to be the same width. So we don't want to cut it off at 44, otherwise it wouldn't be the same width. Guess what you do to get your frequency?
Count it.
Just count them up. Now normally, and I'll show this probably on the next slide too, normally I put a tally column in there, right? Because I get distracted real easy, Phoenix. So I have to go down through and say, okay, I got this, and I got one there, one there, one there, one there, another one there, one there, one there, one there. And I gotta tally them all up. Then I do the frequency. That way, if I get sidetracked, I can always come right back to where I was. Oh, that was on there. Always round up. Always round up. Number 3. I don't know that I'd write down all this. This is what I just got done explaining. Use the minimum data entry as your lowest. So what was our lowest? 26. Find the remaining lower limits by adding the class width. So we went from 26 to here, to here, to here. Not sideways, not over to the upper limits. Straight down the lower limits. All right? You might just, as you write it down, simplify it a little bit. Make it easy, so something that you know. Then once we have all the lower limits, how do we find the upper limits? We just went one lower than that next lower limit. And we found all those, except for the last one. The last one we had to add the class width to it. Can you handle all that? Again, the class width, probably the hardest thing. That's that's where most people have trouble. So I guarantee, when we take this quiz next time, there's gonna be a whole bunch of, you got 26 here. There's gonna be a whole bunch of people that put 30 right there. And then, once you have 30 right there, what's that do to everything in your chart? It messes up everything. You may get lucky, and your frequency here might be correct, because 30 didn't add anything to it. Not the most of the time. Alright? So if you mess up finding that class width and setting this up, your whole frequency distribution's done for. So once you find the class limits, lower class limits, upper class limits, then you make tally marks. Count the tally marks and make the frequency. Oops, sorry. And that's what I just said here. Make tally marks if you want to do that. If you don't want to do that, if you just want to say, okay, I'm going to count them up and just write down whatever. You don't have to have this column. This column for the tallies is completely and totally up to you. I like it because otherwise I get lost. And then you count up your frequencies. Now the other thing that's going to get added on to this, class midpoint. We're going to add on a column for that. You're going to find the midpoint of each of these columns, or each of these classes. How would I find the midpoint of 26 and 30? Add them, divide by 2. Is there an easier way for 26 and 30? Could you do it in your head maybe? 28. Now, once you do that for the class midpoint, guess what's going to happen as you get to the next one, next one, next one. What was our class width?
Go by 4.
So guess what's going to happen here?
It's
They're going to go up by 4. Did we mess up somewhere?
No, you
Oh,
just
I changed it. Yeah, so that's not actually 28, is it? That's 29. Then we'd add them, divide by 2. 27.5. And then this one's just going to go up by 4. What's the next one going to be then? 31.5, so on and so on. Alright, you could add them together and divide by 2 each time if that confuses you. And then the other thing, class boundaries. We're going to add more stuff to it than this. Class boundaries. All you're doing with the class boundaries is, and I think I have that on here somewhere, you're going down by a half and up by a half. So instead of 26 to 29, we're going to make that 25.5 to 29.5. Go down on the lower limit by a half, go up on the upper limit by a half. And I'm pretty sure I have that on here somewhere. Following sample. So we're going to make one out of this. Should make you guys do this, shouldn't it? Somebody read those numbers off too. Going across. Oh, hold on, no, let's not do that. Riley, come up here.
Well, okay.
Grab your pen. One of those pens. Well, here, you can use this pen. Help us out, what's the lowest number?
70.
70?
No,
Mark
59,
out
59, 59, 59.
Mark out 59, mark out 70. 70 is second lowest? Mark out 70. Next lowest? 90? 95? 100?
130s, 2 130s, 3 130s.
3 130s, is that the next lowest? 3 of them?
3 150s,
150? 3 of them?
3 of them. Bottom right. 160.
one of them,
170,
just one of those,
180,
180.
Bottom. Right.
200.
4 200,
4 200s,
Two-
220. Just one of those,
Two, 3, 250.
3 250s.
That's 350.
It's only two.
There's only 2.
Oh, the first
Bottom.
three, there's one
Oh,
on the
yeah.
bottom.
Riley was covering it up. Let's see it.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah.
All right,
270.
270,
75.
275,
3.
300.
300.
Is 300 next?
Yeah.
325,
350.
350, 450. Is that the last one? All right, now before you go away, how many numbers you got? Count up your numbers. How many were there?
30.
30.
Says it right on the board.
And I had 30 up here, so we got them all, hopefully, right?
10 rows
Let's read the problem. The following sample data set lists the prices in dollars of 30 portable global positioning systems. Anybody know what a global positioning system is? Your
Kind of
GPS.
crazy.
All right, most of you have them on your phone and stuff now. I hate using my wife. Every time we go somewhere, she wants to use her phone as a GPS, and it always messes up. I like my regular GPS. Let's use it. It's better. We want 7 classes, so we gotta remember that. 7 classes. So if we want 7 classes, what's our highest number? 450. What's our lowest number? And we're going to divide that by 7. Do that on your calculator. And if you come up with 450 something, you did it wrong.
56.
56. Anybody else get 56? Yes, no, maybe? That's our class width. So each class, did they come out exactly 56?
No, it's 55.
And you round it up?
Yeah.
So we round it up every time, that's gonna be our class width. So when we split up our classes, we're gonna go up 56 each time. Once I start this is my classes, what's this first number right here gonna be? 50, the lowest number there, right? Then I'm gonna add 56 to that each time to get these next classes.
When you get, oh, sure, we could start with your class.
No, you start with the lowest number in your set. So 56, we got that. We go 56, or we start at 59. We go up by 56, 115, 171, 227, 283. I already did it all. I didn't know this was on here. I thought we had to do all of it. We wrote all that down for no reason. Not really, no reason. That's your lower class limits. I'm not sure why they split it up this way this time. I didn't make this slide here, because this shouldn't really be here. That bar shouldn't be there, because what we're gonna do is just then find your upper class limit. What's the upper class limit gonna be for this one?
114.
114, this one? 170, this one? 226, next one? 282, next one? 338, everybody see where they're getting those from? 394, now this last one, you gotta take that 394 and add what to it? 56, so add 56 to it. This time, that last one actually came up to our highest number. It's not always gonna work that way, but this time it did. Alright, so lower class limits, upper class limits. 395, 394 plus 56. You add this 56 to this one to get
Like,
that next
I
one.
was like, wait a minute. I felt like,
So we found all that. We did all that, we did all that. Then, I thought we had to do this, but apparently they already did it for us. So then, once we have the classes, we go through here. We put them in order, and that would make it easier to do the tallies. So 59 to 114. Does this one fit in that class?
yeah. Yeah,
So we're 2,
pretty good.
3,
Oh.
so how many?
5.
5. Now, if we just had the list like we had from the beginning, that big long list that Riley helped me out with, you just go through here and you could do the tallies. As you guys were reading them off, you could have done the tallies, and then once we have all the tallies, then we could come out here and done the frequency. Say, okay, here there was 5, here there was 8. Does everybody know what tallies, when you get to 5, you're supposed to make that cross mark?
You gotta put it in jail. Put the seatbelt on.
Is that what it is? Put it in jail?
No, put the seatbelt on.
I'll put the seatbelt on. See, so your mommy and daddy taught you something, didn't they? They must love you. So that's our frequency distribution. Nothing too difficult about it. Not sure why that's on there yet.
Gotta make sure.
Midpoint of a class. If you're finding the midpoint, what do we do?
Add the number plus number.
Add the two. Just find the average is what you're doing. So somebody help me out. 59 to 114, what's that? 59 plus 114.
173.
Divide that by 2.
86.5.
86.5. Now, once you find one of the midpoints, again, you could just take that and add on the class width to it. This time, is it so easy to add on the 56?
No.
No, so this time it might be easier just to add those two and divide by 2. So what's 115 plus 170 divided by 2?
142.
142.5. What's 171 plus 226 divided by 2? 198.5. 198.5. So on, so on, so on. That's your class midpoint. Again, what we're gonna use those midpoints for is when we go to graph something, we're gonna put 86.5 here instead of putting like 59, 60, 61, 60. So we're just gonna use that, and we're gonna have a bar above it that goes up to a frequency of 5. And that's gonna be a histogram that we're gonna get to here in a minute. That just shows all the work, doing all that work. Relative frequency of a class. Relative frequency, to find the relative frequency of a class, you might wanna write this down, I'll give you a second. This is another column that we're gonna add to this. Notice that whoever made up this PowerPoint was being lazy because they don't have all the columns. Right now, we should be at about 6 columns. And they're keep cutting it down to 3. I would think for you guys, if you're doing relative frequency, most of the time, the best way for you to look at it is to make it a percent. That's what's going to make the most sense to most people. Book is probably going to write it as a decimal about 90% of the time. I think percentages are better. If you walk home tonight and you tell your folks, I'm sorry, I'm thinking back to the Stone Age where I had to, when I was in school here, and we didn't have automobiles.
You walked home.
Let me throw something.
You walked out of it.
So when you go home tonight,
Jeez,
when you go home tonight and you tell your folks, I got a .78 on my prop stats test. Are they gonna understand that? Probably not. You're probably gonna tell them you got a what? 78%. It just makes more sense to most everybody in the world as a percentage. Now, the way we get these as a percent, you guys told me, how many total numbers did we have?
30.
30. So you take the 5, that's the frequency, divide it by 30. Somebody help me out. What's 5 divided by 30? Don't tell me 6.
16%.
What is it?
16%.
So 0.16, and we're gonna make that 16%. Then you take the 8 and you divide it by 30. What's 8 divided by 30?
26.
Now I'm guessing that Wade there, what's 6 divided by 30? What is it?
20.
I'm guessing Wade there, except for the last one, he probably rounded these off. What should these sum up to when we get down at the bottom? It should sum up to 100%. It's probably not going to because he rounded some of them off, and we need to know, hey, did we round up, did we round down to get it to be 100? So when you're doing this, the relative frequency, if you go from like 98 to 102 percentage, probably acceptable. If you're up around 105%, yeah, you did something wrong and we need to, that something's not right. So as you're rounding off, it might be a little off. Some of the times it'll come out pretty well, other times it won't. But that's relative frequency. So now we know that what percentage of the prices fell in this low range right here, or in this low class. About 16% of the GPSs fell in that class. About 26% fell in this class, 20% in that class, so on and so on and so on. He lied to us, that says 0.17. That says 0.27. Huh?
That's what rounding up.
Were they supposed to be rounded up?
You're supposed to round up.
You ca how can you go either way? There's a rule for that.
More or less.
Cumulative frequency. I'll give you a second to write this down if you're trying to find the cumulative frequency. This is another column that we can add on to this. What are we up to, like 7 columns now? We're gonna do all of these on that quiz next time. Should we do all of them, Brian? Depends how you, when you guys come in here, how you treat me. There's a whole bunch of pile of money laying on my desk or something, and I'm probably cutting them. Cumulative frequency, nothing hard about cumulative frequency. This is one you should probably want me to put on there. And some of you will say, well, that's stupid. Why would you even do that? And as we go throughout the year, you'll see why we do it. So cumulative frequency is the sum of the frequency for that class and all the classes before it. So if I'm just looking at the first class, what's the sum of this frequency and all the ones before it? 5. There's nothing before it, so it's just 5. Then you go to the next class. What's the sum of this class and everything before it? 13. That's what goes right there. Then you go to this class. What's the sum of this class plus everything before it? 19. And you just go all the way down until we get to the very bottom. What should our last number in this column be? Because that's all of them. Cumulative frequency, it's just accumulating up all of the frequency from that point back. So far we have all this. What are we missing here? We're missing a couple more. Oh, we haven't done the class boundaries yet. They haven't done it yet. And we're also missing the tally that they leave out all the time that I always put in there. Notice down here, sum, what should this sum be? Sum of the frequencies should be 30 for this set. This bottom number right here should be 30, because that's all of them. Frequency histogram, this is very important. See what all I got on. This is the graph for a frequency distribution. And this is sort of wrong. Probably shouldn't put this. We might want to mark that out. We'll just put a graph. There's a difference between a bar graph and a histogram. All right? Histogram, the very last thing, what do they tell you about the bars? They gotta touch. The bars in a histogram touch. Guess what the bars in a bar graph should not do? They should not touch. So if you're looking at something and it looks like this, and they tell you it's a bar graph, it's not a bar graph. That should be a histogram. They drew it wrong. The bars in a bar graph should not touch. A bar graph would normally have something like this: freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. And when the bars touch, that means there's people that fit right in there. And no, Michael, I don't need to hear it. Yeah, there probably are some freshmen who are sophomores who should be freshmen or something.
Super seniors.
Right, we're not gonna talk about those people. All right. Should these bars do the freshman and sophomore classes? Should they meet like that? No, freshman class is separate from the sophomore class. So there should be a separation there. Bar graphs should not touch. Histograms always touch. All right? When you're making it, represents the frequency distribution chart. The horizontal scale this way is what you're measuring, and going up and down is the frequency. So as we were doing that, our first one, we put our midpoint right here, and that first bar would go up to 5 if we were doing the histogram for what we just got done doing, and then we would go on from there. Class boundaries, last thing then we'll put. Class boundaries, to do the class boundaries, I would just write down this. Just that top part right there. To find the class boundaries, all you do, take 5 away from the lower limit, or take 0.5 away from the lower limit, add 0.5 to the upper limit. And all that does, that allows us to have the bars touch, so we're not missing anything. We're not missing that 5.1 or that 7.5 or any of that stuff. It's included in there. It just gets rid of the gaps between the bars. No assignment.